new Summit blocks here. Alright, the new Summit block got here. The box was a lot nicer than that before I started manhandling it. How does it look? Get it out in the shop, we'll look at it even more. There's the initial look at how that Summit block looks. We'll get it up on an engine stand and really take a good look at it later. But yeah, that's the initial unboxing phase. So let's check that out in a little while. See how that goes. Let us talk about aftermarket LS blocks. I have started back in the early days with LS, and we did a lot of good with the original 5.7 blocks. That was the main thrust of it. And then we did some 6-liter stuff, eventually getting into 5.3, 4.8, blah, blah, blah. But there came a time where people wanted more. And the C5R block, yeah, I had a few of those. That was quite a nice block. And you had your choice, and that was expensive, really expensive. It was cost prohibitive, and I believe that was for a reason. GM really didn't want a whole lot of people having those, I don't believe. Not a official word, but sure seemed like it. Last time I saw a price, they were like $9,500 or more. But you had your dart and sleeved blocks. That was a big deal for a while, where they did the bore everything all the way out on the deck, so it was just open deck, and then they pressed the sleeves in there, and they O-ring at the bottom. They were pretty decent. And that kind of went out of favor really quick when you started getting some real aftermarket blocks. I think the first one I got my hands on was Dart was doing a Warhawk block, and we hadn't gotten standardized on the 6-bolt cylinder head design. Being that the stocks are 4-bolt and we were blowing gaskets on boost, people had the idea to do 6 bolts. And I'd seen people weld stuff up, but well, Dart did that first, but best of my recollection, they were off. So it was just their heads could be used with it in 6-bolt fashion. And it was, block was okay. Shortly after that, LSX came out. It was announced at PRI, and now I'm trying to remember back, 05 or 06 PRI. Well, I immediately ordered one. When we got it in the shop, I think had number 317 on it. So there's a 317th block made. I don't know how many of those are pre-production and not available to the public. Maybe I got the 317th public used one. I don't remember. I didn't think much to ask about it that much. I was too busy building that engine for somebody and get that on the road. And that block did really well because that car went that engine went 100,000 miles in that guy's car, a daily driver, as a 454. Quite nice. And since then there was LS Next, which I don't believe I ever had a hold of one of those. Then there was RHS block. I got that for myself. That's a real nice block. I like that. I got the LS7 heads along with it to match. There was something else in between there. Oh, LSR, I think it was. And the distinguishing feature on the LSR, instead of single bolts on each side, there was two. That was neat. That was quite an innovative block. It was quite nice. But I see the price of everything going up. Back when I got the LSX iron block, most of what I've done is aluminums. The LSX was obviously iron, and I got that. It's getting close to 20 years ago. I think it was under $2,000 for me, and now I go and see the price is $5,400. It's gone up. That brings us to the latest, the whole Summit block, where they're coming in right around $3,500. Let's get this camera in here so you can take a good look. Yeah, I'm not too good at using this camera stuff, the gimbals yet, but bear with me, I'll get used to it. So, standard, what's now standard 6-bolt per cylinder. Then we have, it looks like, and I haven't tested everything out, looks like I can use a standard retainer. Maybe, I don't know, these might get in the way. Well, that's the hole for the standard retainer. Maybe I'll grab one and see if it'll fit. I don't know. I don't think it's going to fit around those. But I do know that the LSX block one will work. Man, I'm going to grab these things here. These might be Gen 3s. They're old. Yeah, there's a Gen 4. I know I'm off camera. You can buy the LSX GM retainers for their lifters, but here's the yeah, it's not going to fit. Clearly it's not going to fit that way, which would be the orientation they'd be in, but nope, you're going to be stuck getting the link bar lifter set, which would be my choice, or the retainers for the LSX block, which is fine. You know, I should really be wearing some gloves so I don't get hand moisture all into this iron. There's some gloves. And my dead cat fell off. Yeah, dead cat on the mic, that's what they call it. Yeah, gloves on. So I don't get human body acids and oils on this nice bare iron. Let's try to protect it. I'm not even going to edit out any of this chitter chatter that I do in between. Okay, I'm back at it. Now, a lot of people will see these holes and immediately think, oh, great, I can get to my lifters. And that's true, you can. You don't have to pull the heads to do lifters. You can wiggle them out of there. It's not the reason the holes are there. The reason the holes are there, the stud that comes down, if you are using the 6-bolt head, you're going to have to be able to put the nut on and tighten it up. So that's the reason for that. We get down into here, and we see our breathing, or valley breathing. That's quite nice. There's an oil pressure takeoff right there. Obviously, there's where your sensor is going to go on the Gen. This is all Gen 4, by the way. Gen 4 cover up here. They threaded that. That's nice. Gen 4 knock sensor, if you're the kind of person to use those kind of things. Interesting. Not thread in on the freeze plugs like a typical LS block. They're hammering like a big block or small block Chevy. Not that it's a bad thing. It's just is. I'm not complaining. I kind of see it either which way. It's going to take a standard dumbbell through the hole back there. When you get into here, they didn't ship with studs or anything. It's just standard good hardware. And I know everybody may argue that when I call this a budget block, but as far as aftermarket blocks, this would have to be called budget. Yeah, it's way more than buying a 6-liter block. But it's way better than having an LS7 block, which is an okay block, but it needs a whole bunch of work, like changing the ductile sleeves and things like that. It's just not quite worth it to most people. I've got a good bit of clearance out here for stroke, and I can't remember the top stroke. I swear I read 4,250, but maybe it's 4,125 it's ready for. It's priority main oiling. That's quite nice. And let's see here. Let's move this thing around. I'll double check and see how the camera picks this up. Yeah, it picks up pretty good. And you may not want to look at it upside down. You may want to look at it normal in the front. And there's the 2 holes that are on the typical, people call it a tensioner. It's kind of a rub block. I would never use the LS3 tensioner with the spring thing. That's just not my thing. We're drilled and tapped on the oil galley plugs. And that's a welcome addition to anybody who's ever had a cam retainer plate with that little silicone ring. If it's come leaky or whatever, you've lost oil pressure and you had to go in, well, that's gone. It's all plugged up. But you can no longer use the 3-bolt cam retainer. You're going to have to use the specific one. It's good for this, and I think the dart block uses the same one. I can't remember. It's on Summit's site. Standard oil pump goes on there, and you're going to have to plug that hole just like you normally would with freeze plug, just like you normally would. Let's get to the back of the block. And I'm wrapping my air hose up in here. I probably should have put that away before I did all this. And I don't know how well you're going to see around the engine stand, but we'll do our best. You get that lovely bolt hole that production blocks don't get, so if you use a Glide or a Turbo 400, you get to use all the bolts. The back of the block, we're then threaded. Very nice. More of those regular non-threaded freeze plug. I know you're going to hear sick and tired of hearing me talk about the freeze plugs. It's a nice casting. It's really nice. And they tell me this is they do drill out the dipstick hole, which you would think is standard practice, but I've seen quite a few that weren't drilled. They tell me this is a Tier 1 German foundry and premium iron. I don't see where they're wrong on that. This is a good looking piece. So, there it is. That is Summit's new LSX block. I'll get all the pieces to fill it up. It'll get machined out to fit. Oh, we'll visit our old boy Kevin over at APE, and he'll do the final little cut work on it, and then we'll bring it back and put it together and put it in the car that it belongs in. And it's only going to be a 427. I know that's funny to say these days, only a 427. Well, actually, probably a 433. But that's all it needs to be. I got a 4-inch stroke, and I got some probably 4140 pistons bore-wise, so nothing too crazy, but nice and durable. And maybe I filmed that whole deal, that build. Maybe I don't. This is just to show off the new Summit block. Figured since it's the newest thing, people would like to see it. I know I would if I didn't have one in my hands. Looking at the Summit site's one thing, but seeing somebody out in the wild with it, yeah, that's a whole nother. Hopefully I got everything anybody wanted to see on this, and it makes you want to go out and buy 10 of them. Y'all have a good one. I'm going to get on out of here for the day.